We will get started. It's 12 o'clock, so we'll get us moving through our webinar today, all about managing your health through the holidays. So for those of you who have not been on a webinar with me before, my name is Nikki Johnson, and I am an extension educator with the University of Minnesota Extension and North Dakota State University Extension. I focus a lot on community health and nutrition and spend a lot of time in the world of chronic disease prevention, specifically diabetes prevention. But I really was interested in offering this topic because it is something that tends to come up every single year, right? And multiple times a year for that matter, as we move through different holiday times or different social events. So really what we're going to go through this afternoon during our time together is I want to talk about some of the barriers that all of you might be having or that might be just common to your personal health and wellness goals during the holiday season. After we do that, we're going to talk about some different strategies for staying on track with your nutrition and fitness goals. And then I'd also want, by the end of our 45 minutes together, you'd be able to identify one or more strategies to implement this holiday season. So I want you to walk away from or log off from this webinar today feeling like you've got a tool or a couple of tools that you might be able to utilize in navigating the holiday season. So you're probably not surprised to hear this, but many people find it difficult to eat healthy and stay active during the holidays. And that's for a variety of reasons. You know, this time of year is packed with shopping, baking, holiday parties, and oftentimes the social events that we're partaking in are centered around food, right? Good food and good times seem to kind of just go hand in hand. There's always that food component there. And when we are thinking about these different social events during the holiday times, sometimes those food choices might be very limited and might not involve a lot of healthy options. We know that relationships with friends and family can also play a role and may influence how and what you eat. So there's a lot of things that kind of come up as maybe a challenge when we think about our overall wellness during the holidays. So before we start talking about some problem solving, some tips and tricks and things like that, I would love if you could add to the chat what your biggest health challenge during the holidays is. What is your biggest health challenge during the holidays? Okay, seeing things starting to come through here. All right, so stress, portion control, making time to exercise, staying active, eating healthy, combination there. Getting to the gym on my regular schedule. Yes, time to exercise, stress, sugar, fitting in those workouts, mindless eating, overeating, stress in family relationships. Okay, I'm seeing all kinds of stress. Maybe we should have done a whole webinar on just stress. We're going to touch on it. Maybe that's something to think about as we next year, I guess, for around this time. Okay, this is great. Thank you all so much for sharing. This is really helpful. And I think just kind of breezing through some of these challenges that you've listed here, I think we're going to be able to touch on each of these, at least in some aspect. Now, I have to say thank you. As I was thinking about challenges, I was kind of pulling my office and saying like, okay, what are your biggest challenges? And you all identified some of the same things that we talked about in our office here. Stress being one that kind of feeds into a variety of different elements. It can affect our food, it can affect our fitness, it can affect our sleep, and that can be a major challenge. Sleep in and of itself can be a major challenge during the holiday season, right? Our routines are kind of interrupted. We've got a lot going on. There might be travel involved. And when we aren't sleeping well, we're not doing our best to fuel our bodies and to make sure our bodies are staying healthy. I already kind of mentioned routine, but during the holiday season, it seems like there is everything getting added to the calendar, right? We've got programs, we've got work celebrations, we've got personal celebrations with family, with friends. And so our routine is kind of all over the place. So that can pose a huge challenge for us. Different temptations. There's a lot of different unique food options out there during the holiday season, some that are very time specific and be very special, which can definitely cause sort of a cue to make us overeat. Being overcommitted, overscheduled, I think is pretty common during this time frame as well. Again, food and treats, and sometimes just abundance. And abundance in a broad sense of the term. It might be food, but it also sometimes is an abundance of events or an abundance of stress, right? That can encompass a lot of different things. So my hope is that today, as we are kind of moving through these different tips, tricks, tools, and strategies, that we can address each of these in some way, shape, or form. So again, we're going to talk about a mix of strategies for managing our health through the holidays. We're going to talk about food, fitness, and then some overall tips as well. But I wanted to kind of kick us off with food, because when I think about managing, when I think about managing food choices for social events, I oftentimes like to break them into two categories: before the event and during the event. There's steps that we can take before something even starts, and then there's steps we can take to kind of manage our food choices during an event. So as we're kind of moving through these, that's kind of my mindset to kind of talk through each of these. So planning ahead. One of the best ways that we can prepare for a holiday event, whatever it may be, is to eat before you go. Show up with something already healthy in your belly. Okay, this is a mistake that people often make. They skip a meal. They're like, oh my gosh, I've got this big holiday gathering. There's going to be food everywhere. And so they skip a meal. And I repeat, do not skip meals, because while the idea might be that you might have more room or you've eaten a little bit less calories, oftentimes what happens is this plan sort of backfires. When we end up skipping meals, oftentimes we end up overdoing it later on. Okay, so instead we want to have something healthy to eat before you go. And that doesn't have to be a gigantic meal or anything like that, but make sure that you're eating your regular meals throughout the day. Totally fine if you decide to have something maybe a little bit smaller. Really focusing up on those fruits and veggies, those fiber-filled foods, are really protein-rich, nutrient-dense foods, things like that. But we definitely want to have something to eat before you go. So don't skip. It will hurt you in the end, okay? So plan ahead, have something good in your belly before you head out to your event. The next thing that I like to always think about when an event is coming up is to plan ahead by bringing something to contribute, or planning to bring something along that's going to align with your food and nutrition goals. Now, this does not necessarily mean that everybody at the event needs to be in the know about how nutritious your dish might be, but at least then you can feel confident that there's going to be at least one item there that you're going to enjoy that's also going to meet some of your goals. Okay. Some of my favorite things to bring along is a vegetable tray that looks a little fun. This is one that we did for an event last year for a holiday party, using our array of vegetables to make it look like a snowman. It was a huge hit. And what I did is I included two healthier dips that people could choose from. We had a hummus, and then what's featured here is a really flavor-packed veggie-filled Greek yogurt dip, just as flavorful as some of the other veggie dips that you might buy at the grocery store, but much, much healthier. I also knew what every single ingredient was that was included. I've also done a couple of to-go fruit dips that are higher in protein that people absolutely adore. I always get asked for the recipe, and yet you would never know that it's healthy. It's so indulgent and it's fabulous. And it fits right along with those sweets and dessert table, but again, it's focused around the fruit, and is still super flavorful. I also might opt just to bring something like an appetizer or side dish, but just healthify it up a little bit. I'm sure you all have like a go-to crowd pleaser recipe, right, that you like to bring. It's totally fine that you'd want to bring that item, but again, maybe spiff it up a little bit. Make some healthier swaps of some more nutrient dense items over some of those calorie dense one. An example of that might be simply utilizing let's say a salad recipe and swapping out some of the mayonnaise for a Greek yogurt instead. That can dramatically change your calorie count at the end of a holiday gathering, especially if you've gotten multiple throughout the week. So plan ahead and bring something to contribute that you know aligns with your goals. And I will say too, if you've got a super yummy, healthy recipe you like to bring, feel free to add it to the chat. It's always good to get some ideas from others in the room. Another way that you can plan ahead is by talking to the host. Now, I know I saw a couple of people had mentioned in the chat earlier, kind of setting those gracious boundaries with others maybe in our lives, because I would guess that many of us have that person that in your life that maybe is a bit of a food pusher. Oh, just take a little more. Oh, you have to have this. Or maybe they show their love through feeding those around them. I know I'm totally guilty of that. I often show my love through making food. So, and that can be a tricky personality type to handle when you've got those certain health goals in mind. So sometimes it can pay off to reach out to that person or reach out to the host ahead of time to simply let them know that you are trying to be really mindful of your food choices for your overall health. And that if you decline a certain food item, that means, it's nothing against them. It's simply that something that you are working on. You're working on creating healthier behaviors. Um, and I would say a lot of times, if you do that, people are really understanding that, hey, you are really working on your health right now. And so it's not a slight that you aren't taking a specific item, or maybe that you're taking less. Depending on who your host is, I would say reach out to them however it's comfortable. Maybe it's just shooting a text like, hey, I'm working on my health right now. So like, don't be offended if I'm not taking a lot at our potluck this week. Or maybe you're gonna give them a call. Hey mom, I know that I've always been the one that kind of has the big plates at the holiday gathering, or I like to snack on all of these items. But this year I'm really being cautious about mindful of what I'm putting on my plate. So I wanted to let you know ahead of time so that your feelings aren't hurt. Those kinds of things. It might be a little bit nerve-wracking the first time you do this, but the more and more it happens, I think the easier it becomes. And I will say this is something that I often ask my class participants to do when they have specific nutrition goals in mind. And there has never been a time where a participant has had a bad outcome. They actually thought that this ended up being a really positive way of communicating with their loved ones about their goals, and just made holiday times feel a little bit easier. Next up, let's think about at the event, things that we can do to help us to stay on track with our nutrition goals. One of my first tips, and I would say sometimes can be an easy one depending on the food options that are there, but I encourage you to fill up on those fiber-rich foods first, because it will be a little bit more filling. Those fiber-rich foods are often also really high in other nutrients, vitamins, minerals, again, fiber, oftentimes water as well. And so it can be a little bit more filling. So start with those foods first, or put more of those items on your plate, and then kind of fill in around it. It's a great way to kind of deal with portion control. And if you have somebody that might be looking over your shoulder and seeing how many things are on your plate or how full your plate is, this can be a good way to take up a lot of space, but not take up a lot of calories of things that maybe you're trying to avoid. Another kind of trick of the trade for filling up at an event is to choose a broth-based soup over a cream-based soup if that's an option. The broth-based soup is going to have a lot less calories than, say, our creamy-based soups, so it can save you some calories in the long run. Another thing that you might want to be mindful of at the event is your beverage choices. So beverages are a really sneaky way to get more calories than we really want to have, because most beverages outside of water, so things like soda, a holiday punch, or a special holiday drink, or even alcoholic beverages, can add a significant number of calories to your daily total. And a lot of times we're not fully paying attention to the number of refills we might be getting or how much of a beverage we're actually drinking, because judging a glass size can be difficult. How many ounces are actually in this? The host just kind of kept coming around and filling everybody's punch glass up. So it can be a way that we get a lot of additional calories. In addition to that, let's say you did decide to consume some alcohol. Again, I would caution you about your choices, not only because of the additional calories, but when we consume alcohol, our inhibitions are lower, which can cause us to eat more and maybe choose less healthy items. So it kind of has that twofold effect there. So instead, try to stick to water. Again, water is going to be 0 calorie. It helps you to stay hydrated. It also can be a little bit filling. So choose your beverages wisely. Next up is socializing away from the food. So I don't know about all of you, but grazing is a real challenge for me. It's kind of that trigger. If the food is sitting out on the counter, everybody's kind of gathered around the island or around a space where the food is sitting out, I am so tempted to just kind of keep nibbling and mindlessly nibbling. I'm not really thinking about maybe all of the foods that I'm putting into my mouth or the quantities. So socializing away from the food can be a really nice trick to keep that trigger or food cue out of sight, right? So instead of that seafood, eat food mentality, if you can socialize away from the foods, it can kind of take away a little bit of that temptation as you are navigating through the event time. I know that's not always possible, but if it is, moving out of the space can be really helpful. Another thing to keep in mind at the event is simply choosing smaller portions. So I think about this a lot at Thanksgiving. So we've got that coming up on Thursday, right? And I oftentimes will, it's one of my favorite holidays. It's surrounded by food and all the foods that I love. And by the end of the day, there are times that I have felt absolutely miserable because I think I'm taking an appropriate portion, but considering I'm taking a little bit of everything, I'm taking the mashed potatoes, I'm taking the green beans, I'm taking the candied carrots, the turkey, the stuffing, the whole shebang, right? But because I'm taking all of that, those portions are really more than what I actually need. So I end up feeling miserable. And that kind of theme, I guess, can continue on through other holiday gatherings. There's so many delicious things to try and to nibble on. And even if you're taking what you would consider maybe your normal portion, because there's so much of it, we end up overdoing it. So instead, start with much smaller portions, maybe even less than what you think you would need or want. Start with that smaller portion first and go from there. If you're still hungry 10 minutes after you had that plate, go ahead and get some more. But otherwise, don't give your belly a moment to recognize that it is full. One trick that I like to use for choosing smaller portions is actually selecting a smaller dinner plate. Now, this is much easier to do when there's different plate options available to you. If you are dining at a family member's house or a close friend, maybe they've got a variety of plate sizes. And so instead of the dinner plate, you're going to take that salad plate instead. What's kind of great about taking a smaller size plate, you're automatically going to end up taking smaller portions, but your eyes are still going to visually be feeling like you are getting a larger quantity of food. Okay, it's a little mind trick that you can play on yourself. So choosing a smaller plate can actually help you to get some smaller portions. I would also say that if there is something really decadent that you absolutely love, don't skip it. We don't want you to be missing out on some of your favorite things. Just rather than taking an eighth of the pie for your dessert on Thursday, do 1/16. Do something a little bit smaller. And just by making some very minimal portion sized changes, you can dramatically cut back on the number of calories that you're consuming at a holiday gathering. Now, with that, anytime I talk about eating during the holidays, I feel like it's important to give everyone a reminder that you still need to enjoy the food and the celebrations with those around you. Being conscientious about your health and your food choices and enjoying the food around you does not have to be two separate things. Okay. It doesn't have to be one or the other. The intention of being mindful over your food choices should not also be a source of stress or guilt or this feeling of missing out, right? That's not our goal. So your holiday celebrations should still allow you to enjoy that time with loved ones, celebrate those traditional foods or treats along the way. Okay. So don't ever make yourself feel like you can't eat that, especially if it's causing negative feelings, right? Enjoy the time, enjoy the food, enjoy the company. So I've got another question for you. I gave some tips for ways to plan ahead and things to do while you're at a social event, but I'm curious about other tips or tricks that you all have tried to eat healthier during social events. And if you would, just add that to the chat. What other tips or tricks have you tried? Okay, eating before I go so I don't go just ravenous and hungry, right? Take a sip of water between each bite. Good. Eating the veggies and hummus first. Drinking water throughout the event. More water. Healthier meal. Love this. Oh, yeah, Alyssa, thank you for adding that. Carrying a glass of water around instead of a food plate. Having your hands full can make a big difference. Makes it a little bit easier if your hands are busy, you're not as tempted to grab. Katie, I don't eat off of my kids' plates. Yeah, kind of that grazing mentality. Lots of water, cooking healthy food so that eating is not an issue. Oh, Beth, this is a great idea too. Sometimes hosting so you can control the menu and make it healthier. Yeah, that makes it much easier, doesn't it? Bring a healthy choice to the meal. Oh, cool, Carol. Taking a photo of your plate so you can see you've been eating. I love these ideas. Chewing foods slowly. Very good. Yes. Okay, putting fresh fruits and veggies on the plate first and then adding other items after I eat those. And taking an antacid. Totally different thing, but yes, right? Perfect. Thank you all for adding your ideas and suggestions there. Again, it's great to be able to learn from each other because while I can give some tips and tricks, I do not have a complete list here. Ruby, did you have a question?
No, sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to address it if you had one. So next up, let's talk a little bit about fitness because finding time for fitness during an already busy season can be difficult, but I want to assure you that it is doable. So let's talk about some ways we might be able to make movement a little bit easier for the next couple of months. And just as we talked about with our food choices and our eating choices during the holiday, planning ahead also has a place in fitness. Knowing your schedule and making a plan for your fitness can really help you to stick to your goals. Okay. Having a plan, okay, planning ahead. I'm guessing most of you probably know what your calendar looks like or the major events on your calendar for the next 6 weeks or so. And so taking some time now, maybe before things are getting extra chaotic, can be a great time to just kind of set up a plan. Try to figure out where your fitness time can actually fit into your routine. There's a couple other ideas that come to mind when I think about routine and fitness. So the first one being shorten your regular routine. There's going to be certain days or certain weeks during the holiday season that have additional activities in which that you simply can't fit in your regular routine for whatever reason. And while that might make you feel guilty only squeezing in a shorter amount of time, maybe just 10 to 15 minutes of your usual workout, some activity is always better than none. And I try to remind myself of that, even this is something I do all the time. But some activity is always better than none. So even if it's 5 minutes, that's fine. At least you got 5 minutes in instead of zero, right? So um, I would say be gracious maybe a little bit with yourself. And it doesn't have to be always your full length activity. It's okay to shorten it up to fit your regular routine. Something else that I like to do and I encourage folks to do when they are thinking about their fitness is adding your activity to your calendar. And whether that's on your phone or a good old fashioned pen and paper, this serves a mix of purposes. It helps with accountability because I would guess that when you make an appointment and it goes into your calendar, you're going to try to keep it. You're not going to miss it. It's on your calendar, it's there. So it's kind of keeping you accountable. Next, having the item in your calendar can actually help to alleviate some stress around the activity for the day or even for the week, right? You don't have to worry the day of an event or a week of programs because you've already planned and outlined ahead of time what your activity is going to look like when it's going to happen. And finally, when you are able to jot something down in a calendar, you've got a visual reminder, a great cue to remind you that, hey, my fitness is a priority, and that can help to spur you into action. One thing that I do as far as my, I guess it's not a calendar, but it kind of works as a reminder tool. I actually have a reminder on my phone and I have a fitness tracker here, but it goes off at 10 to the hour every hour. And it's just a reminder. It gives my wrist a little bit of a buzz and says, hey, move around a little bit this hour. And while it's not a full blown, my heart is racing, great cardio workout or anything like that, I get up for a few minutes here and there simply to move my body. So scheduling that ahead of time, setting those reminders, adding those items to your calendar, again, to help alleviate some stress, make you a little bit more accountable, and give you that visual reminder of your physical fitness as a priority. Something else I like to think about during the holiday season, because again, I know it gets chaotic and I know it gets a little bit busy, but build activity into your day. So this isn't actually like major chunks of time that you would maybe be scheduling into your calendar, but rather just a little bit of extra movement throughout the day to get your body moving. And so that's simple things like parking a little bit further away from your office door. Maybe you're choosing that parking spot at the very back of the grocery store parking lot or the office parking lot. If you're close to home and the weather is not too bad, maybe walking to work one day a week just to build in a little bit of activity. Doing things like taking the stairs. Maybe you're oftentimes taking the elevator because it's quicker or it's closer to your office door, but just try taking the stairs. All of those little extra steps, taking those extra stairs up or down a flight adds up, especially when we start adding that up over 6 weeks. Another one that I really like, and I think this is a dual purpose, cleaning the house. I know that during the holiday season, I tend to have a lot more company. And because we aren't home maybe as much too because of other events, my house gets into a little bit of disarray. And so I try to build in time to where I'm cleaning the house. And if you're doing some more rigorous house cleaning, whether that is bringing laundry up and down the stairs or scrubbing the floors or things like that, because that's extra activity too. All of that additional movement is burning calories. Okay, so Plus, then your place is clean for company if you have it. So, cleaning the house. So, just building in that activity throughout the day. And finally, especially during the holiday season, I say make it fun, make activity fun. You don't always have to do the same fitness routine as you always do. Instead, during the holiday season, maybe you want to involve the family in your workout sessions as well, because kids, loved ones, spouses need activity too. Um, Kids, in fact, need approximately 60 minutes of physical activity a day. And so while school is out on break, they might need a little extra nudge to moving their bodies. And why not make it a fun family activity? Or again, you could do these activities with friends too. And make it seasonal. So try ice skating or cross country skiing. Um, they are great activities that the winter season has to offer, and they're a phenomenal workout. Take a trip to the snow hill. I don't know the last time any of you went to a snow hill, but I think I forgot after childhood how much work and how many calories that can actually torch. Hiking up that hill definitely burns those calories. And the trip down is a ton of fun. You know, it's always going to put a smile on your face. And again, if you've got little ones, they absolutely love it. Try something like building a snowman or a snow fort. It's fun, it's inexpensive, adds a little holiday cheer to your outside environment. You could also check out the holiday lights. But rather than drive around looking at the lights, take a walk around the neighborhood and do some sightseeing. You know, again, make the movement fun, mix things up a little bit, because looking for seasonal ways to become active can actually turn into traditions, right? Visiting parks, doing some window shopping at a brisk pace, or even that sledding after certain family events. I know we've got lots of snow already, so building a snowman or going sledding sounds like a good idea over the coming weekend. Okay, next up, I wanted to touch on stress and managing stress throughout the holiday season, because stress can cause us to act in a lot of unhealthy ways, including making unhealthy choices about eating or drinking, perhaps slacking off on your fitness goals, spending too much time just kind of sitting around or being sedentary. It can also affect how we're sleeping, right? So, one thing I like to encourage people to do is when we're thinking about managing stress anytime, but especially in the holiday season, is be really mindful of the signs of stress in yourself. Okay. And I want you to think about, you don't have to put this in the chat, but just think to yourself, maybe even make a couple of notes. But what are some of your signs of stress? How do you know, like, oh my gosh, I'm getting stressed out? I know for myself, I tend to get a little bit snappier. I tend to get a little bit more frantic as I'm kind of moving around the house or completing different tasks. That's oftentimes when I can start to feel like I'm getting stressed. And once you've kind of identified those signs of excuse me, I'm curious as to how you might act when you're under that stress. So again, I'll use myself as an example. So some of my signs are feeling a little bit more frantic. I get a little bit snappier, but when I am stressed, and particularly if I'm very stressed, I tend to shut down. Okay. I don't want to do a whole lot. Even if I have a whole list of, 20 things that I should be doing or need to be doing, I tend to shut down. Okay. And that means I'm not cooking healthy like I want to be. That means I'm not moving my body like I want or should be. And so for me, when I can identify some of my signs of stress, I can help to manage that stress so that I don't get to the point of just wanting to shut down. Okay. Now, I promise not to just leave you with those maybe negative thoughts about how that stress feels. But I also want to talk a little bit about ways that you can reduce some of your stress as well as manage stress in those times of, maybe chaos, right? So I know when I look at this list of ways to reduce stress, some of them are easier said than done for me, and I'm sure for some of you too. But they can really be helpful, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So the first thing is simply asking for help. Hey, honey, I need some help with this. Or, hi, coworker, is there any way that you can help to complete this task? Um, Asking for help, asking somebody to bring a dish if you are hosting. There's a variety of ways in which we can ask for help, but that can greatly reduce the amount of stress that we're putting on ourselves. The second one for me is kind of the toughest one, and that is just saying no. It is okay to say no. Understanding and recognizing your priorities about the events that you want to be a part of, the things that you want to do, or maybe the things that you don't want to do can oftentimes help us to get to that point of being able to say no, like, no, thank you. No, I'm not going to be able to join you for that event as much as I would love to be there. Or even just saying no to a certain item. No, thank you. While that looks absolutely delicious, I'm gonna have to pass on the candied sweet potatoes today. So being able to say no. Another one that I really liked here that I listed, and it's again, this is not an exhaustive list that you're seeing here on the left here, but making a to-do list. This can be a really good way to reduce your stress because it can help to keep you on target and also can kind of help to eliminate some of those extra thoughts that might be running through your mind on a particularly busy day or busy week. A colleague of mine actually mentioned that they like to keep a to-do list by their nightstand so that when they wake up in the middle of the night, they're like, oh my gosh, I have all this and this and this and this to do. Instead of losing sleep over it, because they're trying to keep that list in their head, they're able to jot it down on a piece of paper next to their bed, and be able to look at it again the next morning and not stress about it. So having that to-do list there. The other side, when I think about stress, is management. So we can reduce some ways in which we're feeling stressed, but there's always going to be moments of stress. So we need to be able to manage that. So that might be meditating, stretching, deep breathing, talking it out and venting to a friend or a loved one, doing something fun, like, oh my gosh, it's been a very busy day. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I think I just need to take 10 minutes to myself, 15 minutes to myself to listen to some of my favorite music, read a book, escape for a little bit. I also really like the idea of giving yourself an affirmation, just simply reminding yourself, like, hey, you're doing the best you can. You've got this. You are really rocking it during work this week. You really crushed that presentation, kind of a thing. So give yourself an affirmation. um, One other thing that I wanted to just mention, and I will add a resource in a follow-up email later today about things that we can do to manage stress that came from University of Minnesota Extension, but I just thought it was so powerful, and that is looking for moments that give you serenity. So just taking a pause during a particularly chaotic day or week, maybe even a chaotic hour, and notice the sky. Notice the sunset or the birds chirping, or the snow lightly falling outside, and just kind of find that moment of peace to help you to manage a stressful moment and kind of just reset you. So I've got one more question in here, but I was curious about what other tools that you use to manage stress. What other things do you do to manage stress? Ah, yoga. I love that. Put on my earbuds, tune out, walk the dog, exercise, journal. Oh, I love these ideas. Hiking. And I got to tell you, if you are being active as a tool to manage your stress, dual benefit. Love it. Snuggle with the kiddo. Yeah. Deep breathing, finding that quiet space to remove those distractions. Oh, David, this is a cool idea. getting up an hour early to make time to work out and take care of those maintenance tasks. Very cool. Oh yeah, check out the ARV. The ARV is great. Very cool. Continue to add in there. I'm going to move on to our next slide simply because this was alluded to already and it was mentioned in the chat. But another way to help us to manage stress and also help us to make better choices as far as our nutrition and activity is by getting enough sleep. So adults are recommended to sleep 7 or more hours per night, according to the American Academy of Sleep and Medicine. And so I really try to think about this. And do I hit that during the holiday season? If you're not hitting that 7 hours, it means we're really not promoting that optimal health and well-being. And if we're not making that sleep a priority, we can actually see a lot of negative side effects. It can make you more hungry and reduce how full you're feeling after you're eating. It makes you more likely to reach for junk foods or foods that are maybe a little bit less healthy for you. It can make it more difficult to lose weight, and it can raise your blood pressure. It can make your immune system less able to fight those infections and can actually increase your risk of depression and anxiety. So if we can prioritize our sleep, we can really help to affect our stress level, our food intake, as well as our fitness. So getting enough sleep really kind of fits into our overall wellness and can affect a lot of our choices. So I know you already kind of saw a slide like this, but I think it warranted, or this warrants a second reminder. But the holiday season, I wanted to say, don't forget to enjoy the food, the celebrations, and those that are around you. And thinking about what really matters during this time. Because in 10 years from now, what do you think it is that you want to be remembering about the 2022 holiday season? What is it that's going to stand out to you? Is it going to be that you got 15 less minutes of physical activity on that one Friday after Thanksgiving? Probably not. But it's going to be the people around you, the memories that you're making with your family and friends. So remember to just enjoy and focus on what really matters. So while I know we are moving into our last few minutes here, I just want you to do a little bit of planning as we move into, some of our first holidays here. And what I want you to do is to think about an event that's in the near future. It doesn't have to be the one that's happening this week, but maybe it's the one that you're most nervous about. And I want you to think about and identify the problems that are related to food or fitness that might come up. And you don't have to pick both, but just one, a problem or two that's related to food or fitness. For me, fitness is often my biggest challenge, and managing my fitness routine. So that would be something I would choose. And after you've identified one problem, make a list. Make a list of some ways that you might be able to handle it. Now, this is like brainstorming. Go big, okay? Write down things that you're like, I don't know if this will work. Just write it down. And eventually, I want you to select the best solution for you, okay? Now, again, be a little bit gracious with yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace. It doesn't have to be perfect the first go around. Maybe you want to implement a plan for Thursday's festivities, but it didn't go quite as you had hoped. That's okay. Identify what didn't go quite so right and adjust it for the next holiday gathering. Okay. Making changes is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. So you can do it. So with that, just some references. I did want to mention that if you need a certificate of participation for well-being points, there is going to be a an evaluation that I'm including in the chat here. You're going to use this. You'll click that link. There's a very brief, I would say, evaluation about the program that you had today. And when you select that, just know that there's going to be a question that pops up that says, hey, do you need well-being points? You can select that, and in usually just a couple of weeks, you'll notice those being entered into your account. I also want to give a quick mention to some upcoming webinars that we have in the next couple of weeks here, but we've got some talks in Spanish. We've also got one more of our No Place Like Home webinars on November 30th, a couple of webinars around recovery and health. And with that, we encourage you to engage with us for as our Extension Center for Family Development. And thank you all so much for joining today. Again, if you need those well-being points, or even if you don't, we would absolutely love for you to help us out by completing that evaluation. Hopefully you found a couple of tips to help. And again, I'll send some follow-up resources to all of you. Yes, thank you all for joining. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season.